Hi everybody. How's everybody doing this morning? Hopefully you all can see me and hear me just fine. How's the video look? Okay? Let me know. Today I have two very special guests today. I'm gonna have Jimmy Cheng from Red 35. He was on my very first live stream that I did with a collaboration. That was that was great. He was great, but the stream was terrible. So hopefully I worked out most of the issues by now. But just be ready for anything, okay? Also, I have Joe Ellis here. He's first time on my channel or on the stream with us, and a lot of you guys been requesting Joe. So finally, I was able to lock him in and get him in on the stream because, you know, until this lockdown, you know, creators, their schedules are so busy. Working photographers, they're both professional photographers. They've done, you know, weddings, family portraits, and Jimmy more lately doing documentary type street photos and things. So I'll ask him a little bit about that. For some reason I can't wrap my brain around what that is, so we'll find out. And then Joe Ellis, of course, is a hardcore wedding photographer. So we're gonna try and pick his brain a little bit and get some talk about his experience with that, and maybe give you guys some tips if you're interested in doing that kind of thing. And on top of that, they're both Micro Four Thirds shooters. Primarily Olympus, and Jimmy just last year got his title for Olympus Ambassador, and Joe is officially an Olympus educator. And they both have channels here on YouTube, and I have links down below to all of their contact points, you know, their websites, their social media, and their YouTube channels, of course. So I highly recommend you check those out if you want some great tips and reviews and tutorials on how to use Olympus cameras. They have really great material there, or content for you to learn and grow as a photographer. So without further ado, let me go ahead and see if I can transition them in. And then what I need you guys to do in the chat section, if there's an echo or anything, okay, because I'm trying to get rid of the audio lag in the stream, as many of you know. So hopefully this works without getting an echo. So just let me know right away, and then I'll try and fix that while they're talking, and then somebody speak up and let me know if I fixed it. But hopefully there's no issues. But like I said, just be ready for anything. You know this. All right, here we go. Jimmy and Joe. How you guys doing?
Doing good. Good.
So everybody can hear Jimmy and Joe, okay? Jimmy, let's see. Okay, so, oh, there's an echo. All right, hold on. Is it just me, or is it, Jimmy, say a few words for me. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Can you guys all hear me good?
Okay, and then Joe, say a few words.
This is an audio test. This is an audio test.
All right, now, who has the echo? All three of us, or just Jimmy and Joe?
What you use to make it, and what's your favorite one?
Okay, so just Jimmy and Joe. Okay, now let's do one more audio test. Jimmy, say one more thing for me.
Testing. Can you guys hear me? Testing.
Okay, and how about Joe?
One more thing.
All right, terrific. Now, somebody tell me in the chat section if that... Okay, that fixed the echo. All right. So we're just going to have to deal with a slight lag, like the lip syncing issue, but anyway. All right, let me start with Jimmy, because we were talking just briefly before the stream, and I kept fumbling exactly what it is you're into these days, because I know I'm very familiar with your wedding portfolio. I've seen that, and I've seen a
Yes.
lot of your street photography. It's beautiful. I mean, your images are really epic.
Thank
And
you.
you also have a page on the Olympus website,
Yes.
so you should check that out. But tell me a little bit about, you know, what you're doing these days, what you work on professionally.
Well, yes, as Rob just said, I've been doing weddings for actually probably around about 12 years or so, 12, 13 years. And about 2 years ago, my work has suddenly shifted, not because I wanted to, I didn't actually do anything, but suddenly I just got way more clients asking me to travel with them and taking pictures of them. And then, so then my business model just starting to shift that way. It's nothing to do with that I wanted to move or change in any way, but then it just somehow, the clientele has changed. And then I'm just shifting more and more to that sort of direction where it's more, I would say destination photography in a way, kind of like that. And so I'm going to different places, following them around, taking portrait of them, where either with the spouse, with the family. So that's kind of thing I'm doing professionally, which I get paid for. So it's kind of fun, It's very different to weddings, of course. And I think I may personally prefer that, which I'm pretty sure Joe will share a little bit of the experience later. Is weddings can be quite intense and quite tiring, if you have to kind of do about 17, 18 hours a day.
Wow. So I mean, okay, so I can see the synergy between like going from weddings to working with a lot of the same clients. Probably, is that right? Is that what you're doing?
Yes.
Okay.
As a matter of fact, I think that maybe what started my whole kind of documentary type of portraits when I follow these people around. A lot of them are actually my ex-wedding clients. So they either getting pregnant or they having kids. They just wanted to have photos, but instead of having in a studio environment, they wanted me to go to a location to have something slightly different. And soon they're starting to share my photos with their friends and family, and that's how I got recommended, and they just kind of roll in the snowball and then just becoming like that.
Wow. So, I mean, if we carry this out, you'll be like photographing their weddings when they grow up, the kids.
if I still have the energy, probably.
That's right. Wow. So when you travel, do they, where do they travel to? Like, have you been like everywhere with them outside of the country, or is it mostly local vacation spots, or?
Well, it's kind of, yes. I have traveled around, but mostly actually within UK, simply because the majority of my clients are actually North American, so they could be either Canadians or Americans. So they're actually traveling to Europe, and then where I will be either going to Europe with them or just staying in the UK and just taking photos of them around the city.
Wow. Okay.
Hey, Jimmy, do you mostly photograph just really big tourist attractions? Is that mostly what they're into, or have you kind of railed against that to do?
It's kind of mixed bags, and most would ask for the obvious tourist spots, like Tower Bridge or a Big Ben and that kind of thing. They want something that reminds them, they are outside of the US or their home countries. But occasionally I will get people asking me, can you take me to a really dirty market? And then, that kind of thing.
So how did you, I'm now, when you say they're North American, but you're in the UK, how do you get these North American clients?
You know what? I have no idea, but I guess that they started contacting me through Instagram, and then that's how I started to roll the ball from the North America side.
Okay.
And I think my YouTube kind of helped as well, because my statistics show me that 40% of my traffic is actually going through US. And, so people know me in North America. And,
wow, that's more than me.
So less people know me actually in the Far East or anywhere else. So US is my biggest traffic.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay, Joe. So tell me a little bit about what you're doing. I think you mentioned you do primarily weddings, like 40 weddings a year, or tell me all about your professional life there.
Oh yeah. Well, I guess I shot my first wedding when I was like 20 years old. So that was like 21 years ago. And so I'm about 700 or 800 weddings in, and we do about 40 of them a year, and that's kind of our primary business. We photograph all over the country, and we've been as far away as Hawaii and Italy to photograph weddings over the years. And, it's been our primary business. And then just like Jimmy, I do a great deal of business from repeat clients who are expanding their families and things like that. Obviously, Dallas, Texas isn't the same thing as London, so I don't have the same backdrops that he has for some of that stuff. But, this is a big, vibrant community, and a lot of people down here in Texas have big Southern weddings. So that's kind of what we specialize in.
I said, do you get clients from like the UK coming over? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I have. Although it's more like New Yorkers or people from Chicago, things like that, that'll come to Texas because their families are somehow tied to here. Like Texas Hill Country down outside Austin is a big destination market. But if you're getting married in Dallas, it's primarily because your family has roots here, I think, is the main reason.
Wow. And so when you started when you were 21, you're saying, shooting weddings. So tell me a little bit about actually how you got your first wedding gig. I mean, because, I was talking to another wedding photographer, Emily from Micro Four Nerds, and she was just kind of the girl with the camera, right? Like, I'm the guy with the camera. And then people just started asking, hey, can you shoot our wedding? But tell me a little about your story there, how you got started in it, and then when did you decide that this is it, this is what I'm going to do?
Yeah, so I got my first camera when I was like 10 or 11, and then by the time I was 16, I was selling some pictures professionally to newspapers and whatnot when I was a kid. And then I went into school and really studied photojournalism and really wanted to be like a newspaper / National Geographic photographer. And I actually went through the whole process of becoming a photojournalist and doing some of that work and all that kind of good stuff for newspapers in the Pacific Northwest where I grew up. But right about the time I came out of college, I started interviewing photojournalists who had been in the industry for a long time. And there was not a lot of happy guys there at the moment. It was that moment when newspapers were kind of going from their heyday and just taking a nosedive due to the internet. There was a big transition happening where they didn't quite know how to move into the new, media. And so at that moment, I started just having friends because I was of that age that were getting married. And so they asked me to come photograph their weddings. In my first year, I shot 5. In my second year, I shot like 26. And then by the time I was in my third year, I was already up to into the 40s. So it was a pretty quick ramp. Then weddings are a business that's funny because it really perpetuates itself. So, like you have so many clients a year, they recommend you to new clients, and then it just kind of rolls through over time. And then as you get involved in your industry, you start to know wedding coordinators and know venue people and whatnot. And then all of a sudden you have a source of referrals, and it's kind of an engine that just keeps going, if you know what I mean.
So while you're at the wedding, you're networking with the other businesses there.
Yeah, for sure. And joining, you join professional organizations and you go to luncheons and you meet people and you share photos with people, and everybody in the wedding industry needs a photographer to send them photos because they're dependent on us for how they market their work.
So let me ask you that initial, what decade are we talking about when you were 20? Like the 80s or the 90s?
So yeah, first wedding was in 2001.
Okay. All right. So you're a young man. Let's see. So in 2001, film was still predominant back then, right?
When I was a newspaper photojournalist, we were going through the digital revolution back with did anybody shoot with a Nikon D1? Did you guys ever photograph with the original?
No.
So that was the first digital camera that we really started working with.
Wow.
Like the screen was the size of my thumbnail.
Yeah.
Was it a 3 megapixel camera? Was it?
I think it was actually like 2.74 or something like that.
It was very small.
Very small. And we would have to go into arenas and try and figure out how to shoot it at 800 or 1600 ISO. And this was back in the day when you would shoot basketball, you'd have to put strobes in the ceiling. It's the only way to get an exposure. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
And so it was a whole different ballgame. I remember the first time I went and photographed at an NBA arena, and there was like 4 stops more light on the floor than there was at like university level. And I was like, this is how they do this. I can't believe it. I mean, like, it was a revelation to me. So, but yeah, I made that transition to digital cameras as early as humanly possible, and went through mostly all digital my professional life. I do have some film cameras. I have like an RZ67 that I love taking out. I have a 4x5 camera that I love working with.
Yeah.
And while I was in college, I actually paid my way through part of that experience printing black and white pictures in the darkroom for a lab. So I have a foot in that too.
All right.
Great.
And just one more quick question is how did you actually develop all of your I mean, you got into weddings so quickly, and that's not a small thing. I mean, that takes a lot of skill and talent with knowing your gear, first of all, but then also having that eye and all of that. What would you say? Where would you say you kind of got that, or did it just come naturally?
Sure. Well, right around that time, right around 2000 here in the States, I don't know if anybody feels the same way, but there was a big transition in weddings from like, I'm the guy with the medium format camera that takes 12 photos at your wedding. Here's your cake picture. Here's your end of the aisle picture. Here's your wedding ceremony picture, to a much more documentary photojournalistic style. Yep. And so it was right during that transition when I came into it. So my photojournalistic skills played right into what couples were looking for at the time. The part of the puzzle that I had to develop early on was directing people. That was like the part that was new to me, because as a photojournalist, I wasn't really doing a lot of that. So I took that piece, and it was a series of learning online, going to workshops, things like that kind of brought me up to speed there. And now, I probably do more of that now than, I don't know what the split is in weddings, but I do so many portraits that my job's probably 50% directed and 50% documentary.
Wow. Okay. And then Jimmy, I mean, where did you actually start in photography? What was your transition period from, like, say, I don't know, you tell me, how did you get into?
Yeah, it's quite a long journey, actually, and I share similar experience as Joe. So when I first started photography, but I guess when I first really got my camera was when my mum gave me a point and shoot camera when I was 15. So I was still studying high school at the time, and so I was just using that, my very first camera, to document my trips, because I already left Hong Kong. That's my home country. So I was studying Canada, actually, so for 2 years. So I was there for 2 years studying, having my camera to document the whole kind of experience. Then after that, when I went uni, and I went on to a field trip with a bunch of classmates, and they all have SLRs, the film SLRs, and I still had the same point and shoot I had. So for 1 week, we went out around the UK trying to take some landscape photos, and all I came back was a bunch of junks, and then I couldn't really present anything. I think technical reasons, not really the camera's problem. I think at the time I was just a guy with a camera rather than a photographer. Yeah. So so then when I got inspired by them, basically, and then starting to take it a little bit serious, I saved up for a year to buy my first SLR and just started practicing it. Then obviously after uni, I started traveling a lot more, and I started taking more photos, and eventually I started to publish blogs. I don't know if you guys still remember in the early 2000s where the blog or internet starting to bubbling up. So I actually had a really successful traveling blog at the time, and I had quite a lot of followers. That blog site actually completely gone now, so you can't even find my blogs anymore, unfortunately. And so it was really popular, and it got to a point that it's, even the business insiders in the US and the Australia actually saw my photos on my blog, and they actually called me, a long distance call me and say, can I interview you? And then trying to publish some of your photos. I think your stuff are actually quite good. So I think at that time I thought, maybe I can use a camera to do something commercially, but still it's more landscape than anything else, or more like travel photography. Yeah. So, but I think at the time, people already see my photo. I started to get calls about doing something, but I wasn't confident enough. I wasn't a commercial photographer. I wasn't trained up as a photographer. I was self-taught most of the time. And then I got friends who know that I'm taking photos, and just asked me, can you do my wedding? Similar to Joe, I got some friends who are getting to that age when they're starting to get married, and then just thought, can you do something, just for my wedding? I got,
Yeah.
well, why not? I got my camera here, just trying to help my friend out. Might as well have some fun at the same time because I kind of enjoy the process. And that's how I got started. Then eventually, just once again, the snowball started to roll. It's very similar to Joe, just starting to roll up,
Yeah.
4 or 5 years' time, just becoming a main business.
So, okay. So let me ask you, Joe. You started very early on in life, as soon as, very early in your adult life, I should say, with going professional very quickly, I think. How would you say that, and both of you have said that really your business got started because people were asking you to take their photos at their weddings through your friends, right? Friends and family, I assume. And then it just kind of picked up from there, like from 5 weddings to 20 some weddings the next year, and then 40, which is like, feels like every week. But I think those basic things, still apply today. If someone wanted to get into wedding and portrait and, travel type photography, I think always, right? The more people you know. I mean, would you agree with that basis for starting into this kind of thing, or?
Yeah, I think the most important thing if you're starting out is to be honest with people. I mean, there's always people who are on a serious budget looking for a way to have some good pictures and whatnot. And if you're honest with them and you can do it for free or a reduced price, I think that's totally a valid way to get into it. I also think another way you can is you can assist a photographer who is more established. I do think it's really important if you're taking on a wedding that you really do understand how to make sure things are done properly and safe. And that really also depends on how much you're charging and how honest you've been with the couple. I don't want anybody to run out without the really understanding lighting, for example, or how to set their camera and start trying to shoot a wedding thinking I'm going to get started that way.
Right.
That's very dangerous situation to be in because, these are unrepeatable once in a lifetime events.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, like I came into it from a photojournalist perspective, we were already under the gun for every single assignment. We already had all that pressure to perform for everything that we did. So I didn't really feel that same thing as I was starting. But as I have talked to, coached, and mentored people, my basis is, you could start out shooting family portraits, for example, which is a lot less pressure and really learn how to do your settings and work with people and work how to pose people and then move into weddings. And I think a lot of people do that. Or you could go and assist. Those are my 2 best advices for how to get started.
Okay, and Jimmy, you have a little bit different story. I mean, I know you kind of started the same way through your friends or people that knew you, but I thought it was kind of interesting that you got a lot of or some recognition through your online presence and social media. I guess more recently. So. Do you use your social media to drive business, like your Instagram or your YouTube channel, or tell me a little bit about the marketing side for you on that point?
Well, quite frankly, if you anyone who follow my Instagram knows that I'm not very active on Instagram, to be honest. So every now and then I post the photos, but it's not I don't use it as a direct marketing tool, so to speak. I do, however, use Facebook, and when I used to post blogs and things like that, I do hashtag myself and the category I will see. And so like if I post any wedding photos or anything like that, or any destination that's quite funky or quite nice for weddings, I'll tag them in the metadata. So when you do searches, and it's quite easily just pops up. So it's all accumulative as well over time. You can't really do it overnight. So you have to keep doing it for a year, for 2, 3, 4, 5 years, and just keep doing it. So the more you post, the more populated it becomes. And then so when people come to search it, and very likely one of your photos is going to pop up. So ultimately, it's still depending on how talented you are, and if your photograph come out stunning and just caught people's eyes. And then when they do these keyword searches on the internet, for instance, like destination in Dallas, for instance, just using an example there, images will pop on Google, or if it's a wedding Dallas and this sort of thing, people will come up and see the images. If something that caught their eyes, they click on the image, and they either directly link to your Instagram or link to your website, for instance, or any blog that you might have published.
Okay.
And I think I get that sort of indirect marketing rather than direct marketing. And I remember when I first started, I used to pay a lot of money for magazines, for some of the wedding websites and things like that. And I actually found that it's not as effective as actually what I was doing myself, and because I actually spent fortune on those magazines and websites.
Yeah, I'm sure. So, as a percentage of your business, how much do you think? And if it's changed over time, let me know. Like you can say 5 years ago it was this, but now it's more like this. What percentage of your business do you think comes indirectly like that through? I mean, cold, totally new clients, like never heard of you before, but found you online or through some other mechanism?
I would actually go as far as 80%.
Wow.
Yes, all new clients are actually found me that way. In fact, from some of the clients that I spoke to when they were here in London, because I usually try to have a conversation with the client to see how they found me. I'm just curious how they actually know about my service, and a lot of them actually said, you are actually very popular on one of the Facebook groups." Really, I don't even belong to that Facebook group, but apparently a lot of my client has been raving about my pictures, and they keep sharing the pictures in the group.
Wow.
And that's how they found out about me. And so every time they travel to London, and they just basically hook up with me and just send me an email 3-4 weeks beforehand. "I'm coming to London. Are you free on that day? I just want some photos of it."
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That's huge. So that 80% of new customers you're getting indirectly through this by building your Facebook and that foundation of hashtags or tags. I'm not that familiar with Facebook, but that's interesting. How about you, Joe? Do you use any kind of indirect marketing and get new clients, or is it mostly just referral? What's your client base look like, or new clients?
Yeah, it's a big mix of things like Instagram, Facebook, wedding websites, magazines, publications. But I would say the biggest source for us is just word of mouth and referral.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying earlier is like if you're in a wedding community, knowing people and developing those relationships is the thing that's the most useful, because obviously people aren't, I'm not seeing repeat clients for weddings, obviously. So, it's been the biggest driver. I'm sure it's the same for Jimmy, but here in Dallas, like the directory for, let's say, on the Not for Wedding Photographers in Dallas, we've got more than like 3,000 wedding photographers in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.
Wow.
So, I'm sure London is probably close to, and probably worse, but so, like doing things like hashtagging and whatnot can get drowned out pretty quickly, pretty fast. So you've got to kind of niche yourself a little bit, but you're far better off getting that referral from a venue you like to work at than simply, trying to sit here and wait by the computer for some hashtag to bring somebody to you. But like I said, it's a big mix.
Right. Wow. Okay. This happens a lot. I lost my train of thought. I was going to ask Jimmy something, but
that's okay. I've got something to Joe as well. I'll just give you some very really interesting stat, because out of my North American clients who come over, they ask me for service. I would say a good 40% actually come from Texas and Dallas.
Yeah, and I think that's an awesome market, and I think Jimmy's in a great niche because he's got people coming to a really famous city, so they're looking and I think that the fact that they're out there searching for a photographer is a great place to be. I think that's one of the things about weddings and like high school senior portraits and things like that is that there's already a demand. Like they are already looking for a photographer versus trying to invent a reason for them to come to you. So I think that's a good place to be.
Yeah. And Joe, you mentioned that it's very competitive. When you're looking to advertise, for example, you see that there's like thousands of other people advertising or marketing in the same way. But so you get a potential new client either through referral or through just somebody cold came in, found you online. What's sort of their biggest? What would you say is the most common, if any, common question or challenge that you have trying to lock in, say, a contract with them to do their wedding or their portrait or whatever it is?
Well, I send all of our information sort of up front. We try and meet them face to face as quickly as humanly possible, because making a relationship with the person is the single biggest thing that you can do to get them to book you. If you're just another number, like another sheet of pricing information, then they have no reason to be attached to you. So that's the first thing. So get them on the phone, or get them over a Skype call, or better yet, if I can get them down to my studio and we can have a face-to-face meeting, well, then I've got about a 95% chance of booking them.
Yeah. Okay. So you never get into like a price war or bidding war with somebody.
No, after 20 years of being in business, we're already like at the upper 20% of the market in terms of price. So I'm really looking for people who are pre-qualified in that way.
Right.
And once you learn who your target market is, then you know if the bride is a good fit for you. And I'm more than willing to pass off clients to other people that I know who are a better fit for different reasons. But my specific client is the one that I'm after. And so once I know I have that person looking, then it's a question of making sure that they know about us and understand what we do.
Okay, and how about you, Jimmy? What do you have any, when you're getting new clients in, they haven't signed anything yet? Are you kind of in this? Do you do the same thing, or what is your process?
Absolutely. I think in photography, regardless of genre, the one of the single most important thing is to get that physical contact with the customer, potential customer. We don't lucky that we have webcams and things like that now. So it's quite easy to actually, even though a lot of my clients are actually North Americans, but we can quite easily do Skype calls, just like what we're doing now. So we can do face to face a little bit, and so they know that I'm not a robot somewhere which is completely virtual and trying to trick your money, anything like that. And but that personal touch is important, because they know how genuine you are. And we also need to want to work out we can click, and I'm not sure about Joe's experience for my, even during my wedding days, I always find that I need to have the chemistry building with the clients a lot of the time, because we're going to spend one of the most important day of their lives for the entire day. It's very critical that we trust each other, we have the chemistry there, and also we share the same visions. Because what I normally do is I would not take clients that are specific, give me something to copy, which I've been asked quite a few times before, where they come up with like 20 pages of Pinterest photographs and ask me to copy these images. Can you do this and that? And then I usually say, no, I don't do that sort of thing. If you're really interested in those photographs, it's better off you finding that photographer who took those photos than asking me to do it, because I have my own style and my way of working. And so it's another thing that I think customer education, and to also educate the expectation, is also very important in that side of it as well, so they know exactly where I'm coming from, my style. And if you see my photography, you like it, then that's why you're calling me, and hoping that we share the same page. Right.
And I think that's what you were pretty much saying, right, Joe, is you have your own style or portfolio. Do they, I mean, when they come up to you, and do they do that too? They'll show you like 20 pages from Pinterest or something. Can you do this? What do you, and that's when you recommend them to maybe another photographer, or?
Well, there was a time when Pinterest pages and getting Pinterest boards from brides was a really big thing. We were actually fighting, all the photographers in the city were fighting that for quite some time, because nobody wants to just sit there and be a button pusher and copy other people's work. I do think I will have clients send us like mood boards. Like I say, send me a bunch of photographs, and then I'll take a look at them, and I'll know kind of what your style is. And then we can pick locations and pick time of day based around that. But you got to have that conversation with them that, they're hiring you for your vision. And, that's really why they're there. So, on a wedding day, one of the things that we've done over the years is always try to do as many engagement portraits as we possibly can, because that's our rapport and trust building time with the couples. So by the time they get to the wedding day, they're really already on the same page that we are, like, okay, I trust these guys. And I think Jimmy was saying exactly the right thing. Like, the trust that you build with the clients is the number one thing that you need to do great work.
So you're saying this, what is this mini portrait session or bride session? You actually take photos and show them a little bit first, or maybe I misunderstood?
It's an engagement portrait. So it's a pre-wedding couple session that they use for, their wedding website, or they put it on their invitation.
Okay. Got it. Because I know nothing about wedding photography, so I was just trying to follow. I've gone to like 3 weddings in my whole life, including my own. And they were all really small except one. But anyhow, wow, that's really fascinating. So you never feel like that they're stifling you or telling you what to do. You have your own creative look or type of photography that you do.
Yeah.
And that's what they pay you because they want that. They don't pay you because they want you to do something that would sort of hinder your creativity, right?
Yeah, I mean, if a bride really wants a photo in front of a bridge downtown or something, I'm not going to tell her we're not going to go do that. I mean,
oh no, well, what I mean is
they're paying clients, but what I'll tell them is that if I have a list of photographs that I have to work off of, like I'm looking at a Pinterest list or whatnot, then the opportunity cost there is you're losing all of my creative vision.
Yes.
Like all I'm worried about is recreating what you have on this thing. And then I'm not paying attention to all the other things that make your day and what's going on unique. And so I'll tell them, I'll say, look, here's the thing. Like, I can understand your style. You already like the work that we do. Let's make pictures that nobody else has rather than trying to make pictures that you've already seen. And in that conversation, if they're on board, then we're a great fit. If they really just want somebody to just create this list of photographs, then they can find somebody to do that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. They share the same page, yes.
Yeah, because I remember when one of my colleagues was looking for a photographer for weddings, and I said, yeah, not me, but I said, but they were really into natural light photographers. So she hired this photographer based on her portfolio, which was like all natural light when I looked at it. And, that's a bit risky if you ask me, but because that really depends on weather. But I don't know,
I rail against that whole theory. There's a lot of photographers out there, natural light photographers, but I don't think you can be a wedding photographer and be a purely natural light photographer.
Because when I went to the wedding, they were using flash all over the place. I mean, they had a couple natural. Yeah.
I do absolutely think that you can have work, and I strive for this too, that looks like natural light, but where the flash is not dominant. I think pictures can look flashed, and then they can look not flashed. But there's too many variables with weather and location and timing that you need. The pressure of being a professional wedding photographer is that you've got to be able to make a good picture at any time, anywhere that you are. So
yeah,
exactly. I mean, that's what people, and that's what I tell people. They'll say like, well, how do you deal with low light and noise? And I say, well, I bring a flash. It's really not that hard, but. Okay, that's true. Now I'm gonna just transition into a different topic a little bit, because a lot of people ask me, and they're very curious about, and it's me as well. But like, and I'll start with Jimmy. Like, how did this process of you actually becoming an Olympus ambassador start? Did they contact you? Did you contact them, or what was that process from going to this photographer? You're using Olympus cameras, obviously, and anyway, let me not put words in your mouth or anything. You tell me how that started.
Well, I think
if you're allowed to talk about it, I don't know.
No. I mean, it's nothing to hide, to be honest. And I think it started. The whole process started when I was switching or considering switching. Mm-hmm. So I was I can say I was a big Canon guy, so I was using Canon system for over 15 years. I was actually very close to Canon myself at the time. But the thing is, when I was that's at the time when I was still doing a lot of weddings. But I found that it was very tiring just holding the entire wedding kit. To weddings, so like 2-3 pro bodies and all bunch of speed lights and batteries and all kinds of lenses and accessories. That case is about 25 kilo, and it's not easy to go to every wedding with a 25 kilo case. And on top of that, if you have to stay over, you still have another suitcase for your clothes and all the other things and whatnot. So it's quite a lot of stuff. And then on top of that, you have to stand for about 12-15 hours a day with the 2 pro bodies. It's a lot.
Yeah, you got to keep them close, right? So people don't steal it.
Exactly. And also that I think at the time, the timing was kind of right as well. You know, the mirrorless market was starting to mature, and you know, Olympus and Panasonic at the time were the forefront into the mirror system.
Right.
So I was kind of looking into it a little bit. I mean, I also looked into Fujifilm at the time. I tried some of their stuff, but I think the main thing was the kit was actually, even though they are, you know, crop sensor, it's APS-C sensor systems, but then their lenses are actually not that much smaller compared to full frame. So like, I'm not actually getting anywhere. So the only thing that could really downsizing is using Micro Four Third. But so happened that I was in the industry, I was relatively known in the industry in the UK. So there was an opportunity when Olympus was actually asking for a bunch of professional photographers to test their then new EM1 Mark II. So I got invited to Spain. So Olympus actually flew me to Spain to test the new camera. There was at the time was unannounced, so I was flown there to test the camera for 2 days. So I was given a lot of different tasks to do, just to test out the cameras, and I was very happy. And in fact, after the event, I went back to the UK and contacted the Olympus. It's quite interesting. Can I have you know, maybe the system to play around with for a longer period of time? Maybe take it to a few weddings just to test it out to see whether it's suitable or not. So that's kind of how the relationship started, and they were quite happy to send me the kit for about 3 months. I think I used this whole entire kit that I was asking for 3 months for free. So they let me test it out fully in any commercial environments, and then I decided to make the switch. So I sold all my Canon stuff, went to the Olympus. Then the relationship just kept on building because they know that I had a YouTube channel, so they're quite happy for me to test further gear. So they send me other lenses and stuff like that just to do testing.
Right.
And I think at some point maybe it's a mutual thing. You know, they think, oh, you're doing, you know, quite a good job of whatever you're doing, and then I seem to be quite happy with the Olympus system. So they just pop the question to see whether I'm able or be interested to be an ambassador.
Wow. Okay. Now, there's a lot of different titles: Olympus Educator, Olympus Ambassador, Olympus Visionary. Those are the three that I'm familiar with. I don't understand the differences, but Joe, you're an Olympus Educator. So tell me a little bit about where that started.
Yeah, well, I think that there's two different sets of people. There's sort of your EU, UK group, and they have ambassadors and probably a couple of other designations. And in the United States, we have visionaries, and we have educators, and then we have a new team of like their social media kind of people. I can't remember the name of that program. I have to look it up. So the educators was a new program that was starting. And as I started my YouTube channel, which I primarily just started for fun, I started just getting a lot of people inquiring and doing a lot of communicating with people. Yeah. And it was through some contacts with like Olympus technical representatives and salespeople and whatnot that they invited me into the education program. And so that's really the long and short of how I got involved with that. But in terms of my story starting with Olympus, I was also working with, big DSLRs and whatnot. I'd actually fooled around with the Olympus gear back when it was 4/3 gear. Yeah. But there was a lot less advantages at that time. Like the camera body was somewhat smaller, but like the lenses were somewhat bigger. Like they had a 40-150 f2, which was like this beautiful piece of glass, but it was bigger and heavier than the Canon 7200 2.8 at that time.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So while I was really appreciative of the engineering and liked the ergonomics of the cameras and whatnot, back when you had like the original E1 and E3, there was a big gap in image quality for weddings between those two systems. Yeah. And so I just didn't really feel like it was quite ready for prime time. And then when the EM1 Mark II came out, like when Jimmy was starting with his, that was also the first Olympus body, I believe, in the Micro Four Thirds segment that had 2 card slots. And that was a really big deal for me because I really, I like having that backup when I'm working an event. So that really felt like the first professional camera body that could really be my main body. But it was actually the EM5 Mark II that I strung around my neck that was kind of my gateway because I could be working with one little itty bitty camera body and I was just catching little moments with it or taking a second or third photograph with it.
Okay.
And that was like, it really proved to me that it could do whatever you wanted it to do. And I always find it funny when people talk about, you know, micro four thirds or they talk about low light or natural light and all that grain and all that kind of stuff, because I'm like, I have never once in the 20 plus years I've been doing this had any client complain about noise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like that's not what they're into. Like, and I always tell people, if people are complaining about the noise in your photographs, you have not made a very good photograph.
Exactly. And it's really, honestly, I always feel like if you expose the image properly and get the exposure that and by that, I mean, you got the exposure that you want. It's it'll be a great photo, you know, technically speaking.
Ultimately, I mean, the photography is all about light as well. I mean, it's something that a lot of people quite not understand, to be quite honest. And they're more worried about technical specification of the camera more than the actual photography, the essence of photography. For instance, you know, in wedding situations, you like any photography, not just weddings, but you look for the light, you look for the right light to take the photograph. You're not trying to push something, you know, extreme to get some exposures. You know, that's really against the whole point of taking a proper photograph.
Exactly, and that's what I do personally. You know, I do a lot of night photography, and I use the grain to my advantage. You know, if there's grain in an area that I don't want, I just crush it down to black and focus on where the light is. You know.
Well, I think a lot of photographers, they get, you know, mired down in the my lagging, guys. I don't know if my picture's still working.
Yeah, you're back on.
Good? Okay, good. They get really bogged down in the looking at the pixel level of the photograph and looking and examining things in Photoshop and worrying about if this lens sharper than this lens, or is there vignetting over here and whatnot. And while all those things can be important to some degree in your work, it's really not the heart of it. And like my heroes in photography, you know, National Geographic photographers were photographing with terrible 35 millimeter film, and to this day those images still hold up as being wonderful photographs. So I can't imagine that there's in any way that our gear would not surpass what that was capable of. So you know, I'm really all about image content, and when it comes to capturing content, micro four thirds cameras are incredible. I mean, just having the what you see is what you get viewfinder, and being able to shoot over your head, under your foot, and being able to, you know, just get to the pictures that much more quickly is a huge win in photography in my mind. If you're into, you know, getting things quickly and making pictures that you see creatively.
Yeah, absolutely. And that, like you've both said, and I've said over and over, that, you know, what drew us really was just the compactness and the portability of the entire system, and not having to drag 25 kilos or 25 pounds of stuff. It's like, and we understand photography and get the image right, and it more than delivers on that front. So that's terrific. So what I'd like to do now, I don't know, Joe, if you can stick around a little longer, because I know it's been almost an hour. I'm
okay for a little bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah,
good.
Me too. Yeah.
All right. What I'd like to do is there's a couple things. I wanted to take a couple of questions that I saw from the chat room, and then I asked some viewers, and I didn't tell Joe this, everybody. But I asked some viewers to submit their people photos to through the, you know, my links and stuff. So I wanted you guys to kind of maybe critique some people photos as well from our viewers. And but anyway, I thought this was a good question from Kostov about, you know, how do you decide on the exposure of the subject versus the exposure in the background, like in a wedding photograph? And I guess we'll just start with Jimmy.
Hello? I think I lost you there just a little bit.
Okay. What I was asking is, Kostov was asking, are you there, Jimmy? Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yep. It's got a little bit lag there, yep.
Yep. Kostov was asking about, how do you decide between the exposure of the subject versus the exposure of the background in wedding photography?
That it really depends what sort of content you're trying to create. I mean, very similar to what Joe just said. And how much of a highlight do you want to be with this, the subject itself in the photo? Do you want to really just accentuate his or her presence in the photo, in the frame, or you want to basically highlight, the rest of the crowd, for instance, they're clapping with their first stance, for instance. Then you have to strike the balance there, whether how much you want to expose the subject against the background. If you want, depends how much you want to involve whatever's behind the subjects. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. For instance, in terms of first stance, and you don't want to have a totally balanced exposure, for instance, because the surrounding crowd, friends and family cheering behind the couple would be like the supporting cast for that particular frame. So I will highlight the subject more than the rest. So I will expose them slightly stronger in the frame than the rest of it. So that would basically give the punctuation in the sentence, saying these guys are just about to do something quite special. And then but you can still just about see the reactions in the back. And if some people always, when they stick a fresh gun out, they totally completely forgot about the background. They would crush the back and they can't really see the surrounding people, and that would mean that they wrongly exposed the photograph. I think as a photographer, you have to make the judgment at a time how you want to present a photo, or what that photo it means for the couple, to make that decision.
Yeah, I would just add that when I'm thinking about lighting a picture, I always think about the background first. Where do I want the background to fall? Like, how bright do I want it to be in terms of my pre-visualization of what I want the picture to look like? And then add the flash second, because that's just the easier way in my head to kind of balance those things out. So if I walk into a ballroom, for example, first thing I'm going to do is just take available light picture until I figure out how I want that background light to look in my photograph, and then I can add flash.
Right. So I guess you both would have to shoot manual because you lock the exposure for the background.
Absolutely.
Right. And
yes.
then you just adjust the power on the flash, right? Or flashes.
Right.
Okay. Yeah, and that's really should be a technique that everybody knows how to do, because it's using flash is so important, I think, in photography. It'll really take your photography to the next level when you're using flash. That was a good question, I think. All right, so let's this is a good question, actually, about video workflow. Like, do you guys do video as well in your wedding photography? And we'll start with Jimmy, and then Joe, you can add on from there.
Yep, I do. Yep. So what sort of thing he's asking for the videos?
Yeah, he's just asking if you use video in your professional work, basically.
I do. I mean, I actually film a lot of commercial stuff, not just wedding, but I also film for Olympus. So a lot of the EU campaigns are shot by me. And so this is, in terms of workflow, I guess, it's all about planning, and I guess it's slightly different to photography. It's a lot more planning involved compared to photography, and also all the transitions and all the other things, story building, mood board. I couldn't quite equate between film and video making and also photography. In many ways, they're quite similar. Like in terms of composition, exposures, and you can almost kind of see that the relationship between the two is very, very similar. And you can take advantage of having the photography knowledge and use it in filming. But in terms of trying to compose and trying to make a movie out of it, and the editing is obviously very, very critical. Sound is also another thing. How much ambience, how much stuff you want to involve in making a movie, like speeches, and you have to pick out a certain keywords and put it into the movie, and certain vowels when they're doing it. It's a lot of these little things that you have to kind of make sure it works. In photography, it's actually easier in that sense, in terms of story building. It's because you're more or less doing things chronologically, and you can kind of fill in the little gaps by having some detailed shots. But in terms of video, it's all flowing together, so you just have to make sure that you got all the elements in for the final edits.
Okay, and then Joe, do you do video work too?
Yeah, so I would say yes. It's commercially you can get into that. I've done more of that than just pure wedding videos, because I don't think when you're a wedding photographer you can really do both jobs as a single person, for example, because I never want to be out there at a wedding trying to decide, do I take video this moment or do I take stills at this moment? So so that's, you have to bring in more people for that. But what I have done over the last number of years is actually been working on a product that started out as what I would call an audio slideshow, where I was capturing all the audio from a wedding, like the vows and speeches and letters to one another. And then I would cut all that audio together and use it behind my still photographs as a sort of multimedia piece. And then over the last probably 3 or 4 years, we started doing some unmanned video. And that's like where cameras like the EM1 Mark III and the EM1 Mark II have been such a huge win, because those cameras will actually autofocus on things that, even when you're not behind them, and you can rely on them. So that has been kind of a fun thing to add to the mix. But we'll have 2 or 3 cameras rolling sort of unmanned at a ceremony, and then I'll have that video. And then, I photograph with my wife. So sometimes I'll have her capturing a little bit of video clips while I'm working on stills. And then we'll put all those pieces together. But we don't do video only coverage of weddings. We do sort of a hybrid thing.
Right.
Yeah, I think it is true, because I recently saw that there's a huge surge in popularity. A lot of wedding photographers starting to add a little bit of video services into the game. But what I found, a lot of the beginners, when they are trying to do videos at the same time as the photography, is not the way to do it. And I think it's either you do a video or you do it as a photo. It's always quite hard to mix them together, because what happened, I see that a lot of the video is that they have the exact same angle as the photograph. So you more or less that you're having a duplication of what you already produced in photography, and that's not really a creative in terms of for the final results for the couple, for instance. You're actually seeing exactly the same thing as the album, but it's just slightly moving, compared to a still photo. So I think you need to take more than that to up the game. So if you want to ever produce video work for your wedding clients, and also be more focused on just either you want to do video or you want to do photo, or bring in assistants, or like what Joseph do, bring in a unmanned camera system, just lying around, so you can capture other angles of the scenes and use a main cam, whoever's controlling, and trying to do some cuts in between.
Right, but it's sounds like double the work, if not much more, to add video.
But then you charge more.
Yeah, of course. And just one last question before we start looking at some pictures. Joe, you said that your wife will take videos sometimes or come with you. How many assistants do you have, if any, other than your wife, that you typically would bring?
Well, I have brought as many as like 4 of us to some really big weddings before, but typically it's just my wife and I. I want to keep a pretty low profile at a wedding. I tell my clients, I said, one of the big wins for me at the end of your wedding is if you knew we were there, but you didn't have to notice that we were there the whole time. Yeah. So we try and stay, incognito as much as we possibly can. And when I am working with a video crew, that means there's already probably at least 4 people working on the audio visual for the wedding, and I don't want to add to that mess any more than I absolutely have to. So, but she's been with me now since 2005. So she's an accomplished photographer and does a lot for our business outside of just photographing and doing video.
Wow. And how about you, Jimmy? Do you bring assistants, or do you have what do you do?
It's very similar to Joe, actually, and I think for some bigger or more important events, I will usually have a crew of 4, including myself. And I have worked with other bigger groups, and sometimes if I'm just providing photography services, you see other team of just doing videos that have probably about 10 people, and but for me, for my own services, I do include video services in the weddings, is I think maximum 4. Usually I will have an assistant for photography, and just to help me capture some of the candid stuff that I'm unable to cover when I'm with the couples. Most of the time it's just the 2. Sometimes depending on the budget, I'll just offer myself.
Okay, all right, good. All right, so that was a lot of great information from you guys, because it's definitely an area of photography that I think people can get into and do well and be successful, even today, despite all of the competition. And
today it's a little slow.
Well,
I
yeah.
gotta tell you.
Well, I mean, like, current, not today.
It's the best time to brush up your photography skills, so you can all watch our channel and learn a thing or two.
Right.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so let's take a couple quick looks. Let me see if I can do this without messing up. And there's going to be some lag. Just a few seconds, I hope. And these are in no particular, and they're not all people photos, so we're going to stretch your critique a little bit beyond just people photos. But I'll go through them quickly if we can. All right. So hopefully you guys can see that.
I don't see anything yet.
Okay.
Oh, I can see it. Yeah. Wow, it looks like, Rob, you're doing a keynote speech.
I know. I need to get myself out of the frame. I tried to get you guys in the frame too, but it's just not showing. So
That's okay. That's okay. I can see it. Yeah.
I don't see it. Is there anything I have to do?
No, you don't have to do anything,
just
Rob. I don't
lag.
think.
It may just be lag. Are you still just seeing the three of us on your screen?
Yep.
But Jimmy, you see it?
I can see it. Yep, I can see the picture.
Okay. 1 second. I'm sorry, folks. Bear with me a second. Still nothing, Joe?
I still see you moving 4x4, but I see a photo on the screen.
On the YouTube, not Skype.
On YouTube. Oh, okay. I can do it.
Sorry. That's a good question. I don't know how to do it on Skype.
I think the only way to do is share screen, but I don't think that's a recommendable thing.
Yeah, I don't want to get too fancy and mess up the stream.
Yep.
Oops.
Oops, something happened there.
Oh, that was me. That was me.
Okay, I got it now.
All right, good.
Oh, there we go. Yep, got it.
All right, so what do you think, Jimmy? What do you think of the picture?
Right. Okay. First off, I can see that the kind of way that the photographer wants to capture, and is a very National Geographic style kind of photo. Mm-hmm. But in terms of technicality-wise, he definitely overexposed slightly, and he need to bring down the highlight just a tad. Certain dodge and burns will help to make the subject pop a little bit, because the whatever you call it on his head is blending a little bit with the background. Mm. So
more separation.
Yeah, more separation is needed there, especially to the subject's right, and that bit is completely merged together almost. I think a little bit of a clarity and will bring up a little bit more of the structure to his face, and possibly just make the whole subject pop a little bit more. That's from the technical side of it. But in terms of shooting the subject, and I would like to see the eye contact there, and also at this moment in time, I would do a slight crop to make the subject slightly more centered, and I think that will how I would take this shot. Hmm.
Okay, how about you, Joe? What kind of feedback can you give here?
Well, I won't comment too much on technical stuff because I think it's okay. I guess I would concentrate on what the intent is. If this is some sort of grab shot where the subject is completely camera unaware, then I would like to see a little bit more context, a little bit more story on this photograph. Mm-hmm. If it's a portrait, then I agree with Jimmy. I think it would be stronger if you had eye contact. When I take environmental portraits or anything where I find that people are camera unaware, then I want to try and tell a little bit more of a story with a picture, and I don't know where this person is or what's going on. It doesn't give me a lot to go on emotionally. And if it's a portrait, I'd like to see a nice, strong connection with the camera. Those would be my most helpful tips.
It's excellent, excellent. Yeah, because I can see where this would be more of an environmental shot because there's no eye contact.
Yeah, I think as a viewer, I would like to see what he's staring at.
Yeah. Okay. We can crop in on his eyeball, maybe. You can see the reflection. All right, let's see if I can move over. Oh, we have a landscape picture next.
Okay.
How do you feel about this? I guess we're going for mood or...
Okay. I think he's trying to apply some sort of rules here. I can see the full third rouge going on there. It's a very, very generic composition. I think he likes the textures. I would actually bring slightly off center in this case. I know he's trying to balance the photograph with the foreground, or at least the lower third to the sky, and I think that's trying to achieve. But in that case, I think because the foreground or the lower third is actually quite messy, and I would actually cropped out that quite a bit. Just have just a little bit of it, and instead of bringing up the shadow, I will actually compress the shadow. Bring it a little bit darker, and just to highlight the background. And I think overall it's lacking a little bit of punch in there, and it's definitely some colors. Either you boost the saturations or vibrancies in here, or change the color tone completely, make it a more sunset or sunrise in color. But it's quite difficult. The sun's quite high up, and so I guess it just shooting maybe perhaps in the wrong time of the day.
Okay, yeah, I really like the clouds though, kind of hovering over the tree line.
I think that's what's the attraction here. That's why I'm thinking you need to bring that more in focus.
Yeah. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I think this subject, it has a lack of, the photograph has sort of a lack of direction. Like, you don't know exactly what they're trying to take a picture of. Like, it's not screaming at you. And I think that a lot of landscape photos lack a center of interest. And in this case, we have that layer of clouds that might be something, but to me, this is a very strong telephoto play. If I'm looking at this and trying to make something out of it, it might be just the clouds and the distant mountains, or just the clouds, distant mountains, and sun. One tip that might make these kind of compositions stronger is you can close down and get that sort of starburst effect that can be much more interesting than just sort of that hot spot in the sky. But I would say every strong landscape photo, like, what the center of interest is. And in this case, we're sort of lacking that piece here because your eye is not following in any one place in this picture going, oh my gosh, that's interesting. So I would say, when you're out taking landscape photos, take a huge variety of them because there's no reason not to. Yeah. But know that if you want it to be strong, you really got to have a center of interest.
Okay, great advice. All right, Jimmy.
Oh, okay. Right. Yeah, I think again this photos is more like an environmental portrait, but in that case, the angle is definitely not very flattering, and the lighting certainly is taken in indoor in some sort of cafe or something. I think there's something I can tell. You need more. I think this can be developed into a series of photos instead of just one single photo. I would like to see a story entirely assembled from this series. Because of the location, I think it's better to break it down to 3 or 4 photos. Like, for instance, maybe a couple of photos of his drawing, a couple of photos of his actual hand drawing it, and a couple of photos actually him facing the camera, and more like a generic portrait. And that means you assemble a series of photos. But just on its own is definitely lacking of the power that's conveying the message over him as a drawer, for instance.
Okay. How about you, Joe? What feedback would you give here?
Well, like back in my newspaper days when the news was really slow, we used to have to collect what we used to call wild art, which is just like you get in your car and you drive around your community until you come up with an interesting picture that you can throw in the newspaper.
Okay.
And the rule was, you need to have at least two of these things: light, composition, and moment. If you didn't have at least two of those, you didn't have a photo that was strong enough to run in the paper. And in this case here, we don't have great light. There's nothing particularly poignant about this exact moment the photo was taken. And the composition, while it's sort of interesting and it is telling a little bit of a story, it's a little bit also got a little distortion going on. And so I'm sort of with Jimmy. I think if I was looking at this scene and I wanted to make something stronger, I wouldn't have the artist's face in the picture. It would be something much closer and looking at what he's doing from a more of a macro perspective, because I think that's where all the interest is. But that's always been my rule: is if I need to have light, I need to have moment, and I need to have composition if I want to create a really strong photograph. So that's kind of a mental criteria checklist. And so in this case, you could create great light, you could improve your composition, or you could wait for some sort of moment. Like, for example, if the subject of the picture was to suddenly show up, then that would be really interesting because you'd have, 3 copies of that person in the picture, for example.
Right. Now, when you say create light, I mean, let's assume that they weren't able to use flash here or anything. That's just a missing element then, right? There's nothing you can do about that. Or what could you do here with lighting, if anything?
Well, in this case, you'd have to bring something in. But when street photographers are out working, they will oftentimes find great light first, and they will sit on that position waiting for something interesting to happen in their frame, because that can bring two things together. It can bring together a good moment and good light. Yeah. So if I'm in a cafe and this is completely candid, I would probably, if I'm being honest with you, I'd probably pass on this moment because I don't see enough there going on to make a really strong picture.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I like your idea of cropping in, though, on the hands and seeing the action there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
It's just like what we discussed before. I think light is one of the single most critical elements in photography. I second to Joe. You always first look for light first before anything else.
Okay, here's a new one. This is something probably you do a lot of now, right, Jimmy, or both of you?
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, composition, definitely, you really don't want anything blocking his face unless it's intentional to create some sort of textures. But in this case, I would like to see a clear face of him. The flowers, you can easily reposition this shot either by moving yourself to the right a little bit, or just ask the subject to move to the left a little bit to avoid that. I know the flower in front would bring certain cuteness to the photo, but I think in this case it's actually blocking it. I'm just trying to see. I don't mind the subject isolations here. I think slightly stronger may actually work a little bit better. But overall, I think is the foreground. If you just want to improve this particular photo, I think the foreground was definitely that flower just in front of his mouth needs to be removed.
Okay. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, and first, let me just preface this. I don't mean to be too harsh or negative with people.
No. Yeah, everyone, this is definitely just for educational purposes. I mean, they're all really nice photos, no question. Yeah. And I just wanted to get their feedback. How we can improve as photographers. If we're there getting the shot or after the fact and post processing.
I don't. I come in all of my critiques as a professional, so I'm going to hold it to that standard because that's kind of where I come from.
Right.
So like when you look at family photos of kids, if this is a mom taking a picture of her son, she's going to love the photograph no matter what. If you're trying to create a saleable photograph, if you're trying to do something at a professional level, then that's a whole different standard, right? And I think I agree with everything that Jimmy said. If I'm looking at the lighting in this picture, this either looks like one of two things. It's either really harsh sunlight or it is really strong flash. I think it's sunlight because there's no catch lights in the eyes of the subject.
Yeah.
So in this case, there's several things that I would do lighting-wise to improve this picture. One of the easiest ones would be to get a scrim and hold that, creating a cloud over the subject. That would considerably soften the light. And then it would look more like a beautiful natural light portrait. If you're going to do this with strobe, my advice is to go ahead and turn the sun, get the sun coming from behind the subject, and then light strobe from the opposite side. That'll create a balanced exposure, and then you can control the light coming from your strobe to see how much fill light feels natural to you. That would actually have the benefit of adding catch lights to the eyes. And then compositionally, yeah, I would raise him up. And I would shoot with as shallow depth of field as I possibly could in this case. So maybe that's like a 45 1.2. I might be using high-speed sync flash to kind of do that fill light in this picture, and that would help with the technical aesthetics of a portrait like this one.
Okay, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I like the scrim idea. You know, links below. No, I'm just kidding. All right, let's look at the next one here. Jimmy.
Yep. Oh, okay. I very, very often do this type of shots when I'm near to ponder something. Well, there's a few things straight away that struck me. To do this type of shot, I usually like to have a very symmetrical shot. Either you go into the dead center to create a leading line straight into the subject. You know, the wooden plank on the foot level is all skewed to one direction, and I like to be very, very center in this case. And also having a very shallow depth of field will actually help to bring out the subject. You know, in this case, I would definitely try to make sure that the exposure is stronger with the subject. Just trying to see, because it's too busy around the whole thing. It doesn't quite create that fantasy that maybe just me that I'm thinking about. If I'm coming to this shot, how I can pose it. Oops, right, where is it going?
Oh, that's my fault. Sorry.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I actually have something very, very similar with a couple, almost the exact same setting, but the way I do it is it's definitely more center, definitely more low angle. I would do a shallow depth of field, stronger highlight with the subject. I may use a artificial light to bump up even more to create the more focusing point to the subject itself standing at the edge of the wood level.
Okay, what do you think, Joe?
Well, I think the light here is pretty soft and beautiful, so I think that could be working for you. I like Jimmy's idea of making the composition a bit more centered. Two things that I would be looking at here is I would be trying to use those lily pads to my advantage, so I might go for a much higher perspective here to kind of make the reflection, the lily pads, much more bigger part of the picture. And then the other thing here is I'm wondering what the moment is. Like, is she looking at herself? Is she skipping rocks? Is she dancing? Is she listening to music? Is it, I feel like there's not quite enough moment in this picture. So I'll be waiting for something to happen that would give me a little bit more to work on from a moment perspective there. But I think the most interesting part of this picture is in the reflection in the water. And I like to see that sort of maybe exaggerated. And that's one of the reasons why like your EM1 Mark III or your EM5 Mark III is so great, because you can use that flip out screen to get high and low and try different compositions so easily and quickly.
Okay. All right. Great. Let's try the next one. Let me just check. Whoops. Let me check the. Let me check to make sure that everybody was hearing that. Okay, yeah, everybody's hearing you, okay? I would hate to go on through like the last 10 minutes and no sound. But everybody's hearing everything okay, right? Just double check. All right, good. Let me go back to the scene.
I need to make sure my camera's still got enough battery running.
Yeah, me too. We'll just go for about 5 more minutes.
I'm actually shooting with the Mark II at the moment, so it doesn't have a USB PD, so I can't plug in a battery bank here.
Yeah, well, if you use the USB PD, The HDMI port deactivates.
No, really? My one works with the PD plugged in.
You got the PD plugged in, powering the camera. And, well, anyway, we'll talk about that later. Let's go to another people shot here. Let me see. Guest, monitor 2. All right. You should be seeing Fiddler.
Oh, okay. Right. For me, this image. Sorry for being blunt. It doesn't work for me at all. This one. Mm-hmm. However, I can see the potential there. I would actually switch the focusing point to the woman in the background who's crossing her arm. And I will use this actually a vertical composition here and see her looking at him playing with this. And also, it seems like this picture is having a lot of motion blur there, whether it's too slow as a shutter speed or actually camera shake. And I think I quite like the color and the actual mood about these things. I think it's all the definitely color is working. I like the colors a lot, but I think in terms of the compositions or from the story perspective, I'm not quite entirely sure what he wants to achieve in here. Mm-hmm. I definitely would prefer a composition to see the woman in the background looking at him than actually him playing the violin.
Wow. Okay. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, from a storytelling perspective, I could see that sort of foreground-background relationship being probably the best part of what I can see in this particular frame. Mm-hmm. You can play around with shutter speed and try and do intentionally blurry photographs, but it's really important when you do that everybody can immediately tell that was your intention. And this one falls in that middle ground where it looks like it could be just not enough shutter speed to keep a sharp image. So my advice is to, check your intent. If you're trying to do something where it has that intentional blur, then do it enough that it really is prominent in the picture. And if not, then keep it sharp. And I like Jimmy's suggestion of working with that storytelling element of the foreground background.
Okay. Sorry. You know what?
Oh.
It's a vertical.
I accidentally zoomed in on it. I'm sorry.
Ah, right. Yeah. Okay.
All right. So any changes? Well, probably a lot now, right? Let's start over.
No, I think in this case it's still very similar. I would rather maybe perhaps see the woman slightly more focused than him. I like the blurring. What Joe suggested. You maybe want to selectively just trying to blur his action of playing the violin, for instance, in his fingers moving or something, just some sort of intentional movement there. It's definitely not enough shutter speed at this moment in time to see that going. I actually think that maybe compositionally you can shift the angle just slightly to try to either avoid the other woman on the right of the frame or the angle needs to work a little bit, but I do like the color. That I think the positive is definitely the color. I do like the exposures and the color.
Okay, and Joe, I'm sorry if you need to update anything there that you had said.
I would take his head and I would have put it in the upper right-hand corner of the frame to create good separation. Like his hat has a nice sort of rim light on it, so it could be in the upper right-hand corner where it's dark, and then you'd have better foreground background going on. And then if you're shooting something where it's moving really quickly, that's where your camera, you can use your drive settings, for example. Mm-hmm. And if you're shooting musicians and you don't want to wreck the moment with the clacking of a shutter, you could put it on silent. So in this case, like silent low at 10 frames a second, or even at silent high at 60 frames a second, you could do a few bursts of that kind of thing to really get the bow of the violin and the player's face in just the right moment, and then you'd have maybe a better profile of his face, and the bow would be in a really interesting position, doing something more dynamic for the picture. So that would give you a lot better chance of capturing something that you like.
Okay, that's great. Great advice from both of you there. Let's move on to the next one. We have a guy in a hat.
Oh, I kind of like it. Right. First of all, the framing is definitely needs slight improvement. You need to shift to the right a little bit. But in terms of the portrait itself, I think there's a little bit. You can definitely work on it. I think it's too little. It's been worked on this particular photograph, and I think it's a relatively well exposed. And I do like the rim light and on the nose of the subject. Definitely bring out the subject a little bit. You need further processing to bring this portrait up to speed, but the raw ingredient is definitely in here, and I do like the colors that your choice. The hat, the jacket, and the actual wall itself is all kind of very nicely match each other. It can be a really great photo, but one thing I don't really like is these deliberate vignetting. I don't mind it, but sometimes when it's too strong, being like this, it almost like a lazy photo. And I think this photo can be a great photo, and I do like the eye looking straight ahead. Definitely a bit catchlight in the eyes, and I can see that there from. So I like it. It can be worked on to be a great image. It has the raw ingredient for sure.
Okay. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I really like the styling, I like the hat and the clothing. I think the vignette is a little strong, and just because my eye is sort of drawn to that, like that looks a little bit artificial. I would say if this is a sort of trying to work on sort of a period look, maybe consider a sepia tone or a black and white to kind of make it more in that vein. I think the framing, like Jimmy said, could come a little bit more center, since it's never be 98% centered, be 100% centered. And it's kind of like with horizons with me. I really don't like it when I see a horizon in a picture that's just 1 degree off. I know we all shoot that way 100% of the time.
Yeah.
But I always go back in and correct it, because if it's 1% off, it's not intentional, and it draws my attention away. In this case, it's just a little bit off center, so I like to see it be centered. I do like that, he's got a couple of different light sources working here. That's pretty cool. We've got that sort of rim light from behind, and then the light coming from the camera right-hand side. I would probably work on his expression a little bit. I don't like that his lips are parted. It looks a little too candid for me. So I'd be looking to maybe strengthen that up a little bit.
Okay. Wow. Super. Okay. We have a couple kids playing on something. Giant air mattress.
Oh, okay. Well, for this one, once again, it's a family moment thing. I think it's a cute image, but I would like to. If you just want to purely improve this photo, this particular shot, I would like to bring in movement into here. It's too static there. I would like to see movement, either background blur, by just panning the shot. You are fully capable with the Olympus system for sure in this sort of thing. And also color, it seemed a little flat to me. I know the light seems quite little soft here. I'm not entirely sure with if there are any artificial lights going on here, whether it's a flash, but it seems to be quite flat for some reasons. But I think for me, I like to see movement in this shot, definitely.
Okay, Joe.
I think that could be an interesting way to go with movement. Where the mattress sort of tails off over here on the right, where you see that sort of blue cushion and the little pillar. I like to crop all that out, so you just have color running from one side of the frame to the other, maybe pushing it a little bit more as a diagonal element in the frame. So I'd recrop it a little bit or move my camera a little bit camera right, so that I'm not having that, and I just have those pure stripes. In terms of a moment, I would shoot a ton of these. I'd like to see a higher angle. So if you're able to get higher up and shoot down on this, that could be really great. But I do think it's a great sort of documentary image, and I think parents love these kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. I like that. Man, you guys are really amazing. Because I just started doing critiques on my live streams, and it's can't hold a candle next to you guys. All right, so we have a landscape here.
Okay. For me, I don't mind this sort of kind of what we usually call it the minimalistic kind of landscape photo, when you just have a single element in the photo that is the focusing point, and in this case it did a pretty good job there. But I think you have to work on the horizon a little bit. Also, there are still some sort of things in the very far end of the frame, that can be easily removed on Photoshop, and that really is kind of sticking my eyes in the moment. And also the overall image seems unprocessed at this moment in time. I can see that it can be processed. I would like to see, if for this minimalistic, I usually do it as a maybe slightly higher angle to involve the sand a bit more, or just the sky itself. At the moment, the horizon cutting kind of in between the leaves, and I'm not quite sure that works too well. And also the blue is definitely a little bit distracting in this case, so I may either turn it into a black and white photo to make it as a part of the shadow, then or highlight, depending how you process it, then actually having a very deep blue in the back, kind of break in half. I would go even lower angle than this in this case, just trying to involve the horizon more closer to the bottom of the stem itself.
Okay. Well, as simple as the picture is, there's still a lot of things in there. How about you, Joe?
Yeah, I kind of agree with Jimmy. I'd like to see that horizon line meet the bottom of the stems, so that we don't have all the out of focus sand, because I think that's even more minimalist. If we just had sort of foreground, background, instead of like this middle ground kind of thing. I think, removing distracting elements would be great. I feel like it's a little underexposed. I'd like to see the green in the leaves pop a lot more. And if it were me and you weren't opposed to photoshopping your image, I would probably take out the littlest little stems there and their shadows. So I just had the two stems and their shadows only.
Yeah.
We're just trying to work with that minimalist aesthetic and try and knock it down to just as few elements as we possibly can.
Oh, okay. Terrific. Because I looked at it, I was like, it's perfect. Okay. Okay, last one here. The bird.
Ooh.
Looks like a female cardinal.
Is this a square or vertical again?
This is a square.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, I was just
Definitely
checking.
square.
Okay. I think first of all is the whatever behind the bird, the blue thing shouldn't be there. So that can be easily fixed by moving yourself a little bit to get the correct angle. I think that's first thing that stuck with me. The blue is very, very distracting in the back. Because it's not a deep blue either, it's one of those very kind of bright blue. It kind of takes away the interest from the bird itself. We're having the bright orange, and it's definitely clashing badly here. That needs to be worked on compositionally. Lighting wise, obviously for photographing animals and birds is quite difficult, especially if they move very quick and very fast. And I guess you need to be patient and waiting for the right angle. So you stick with the angle that you're comfortable with, and also just wait for the bird to move into that frame and take that photo. So rather than following it, I think that will be the better choice. Finding the correct light and the correct background to work with. And also, definitely use even more shallow depth of field if you can. So if I'm not entirely sure the setup here, but if you have a like faster lens or longer lens, trying to make the background even more isolated from the subject itself, so that may bring up the interest even more. But first of all, that blue, it needs to go.
Okay, Joe.
Well, one of the coolest tips I've heard about doing bird photography with Olympus cameras is taking advantage of the pro capture mode. And I think that's all about getting the perfect moment out of the bird. And I like that he's sort of looking at the camera here, so you have kind of captured a moment, but I love something happening with the wings and whatnot. So I would be looking for like a takeoff kind of photo in this instance. So I would set up, like Jimmy said, with the perfect background, eliminating distractions like that blue. And then I'd set my camera on pro capture, and then I would wait for something really interesting to happen. It's not that this is sort of a moment, but I think it could be even better.
Yeah. Yeah, and bird. This is a really popular genre right now because everybody's at home.
Yeah, I've taken a few myself.
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to be doing some myself. I'm going to go buy some bird seed today. But okay, that was definitely next level critique. Because like I said, when I do them, I just I crop them and desaturate. Not mostly technical things. I can't really speak to it the way with the kind of experience and background that you guys have. So thank you so much for doing that.
No, you're welcome.
Yeah, that was terrific feedback because they were all great shots to me. I was like better than most that I take.
I think photography is all about learning each other, improving each other. So I think that's the only way to improve. I've never mind being criticized my own photo, just trying to take myself to the next level, and that's the only way to improve.
Yeah, and like I said, I didn't mean to be harsh on people who are learning in the learning process, but like I remember when I got my first editor at a newspaper, and all they would do is rip us apart day after day after day. Yeah. And it's in that process of feedback that we learn the most. So in that spirit, I was being as hard on it as I would be on myself if I was taking the picture. So like they were all fine photographs. It's just if you were trying to up your game, that's one way you could go.
Okay, no, that was all great advice, and everyone submitted with the knowing that we're going to critique them. So they were ready. Okay, good. So let me just wrap up by asking you guys, Jimmy, I know it's everybody's kind of in this situation now, but what are you working on, if anything, or what are you getting ready for, or?
No, I think I'm going to just utilize this time to reinvent myself in a way. I'm just trying to think about what sort of thing I haven't done properly before and trying to improve that sort of areas, and also trying to do something new, like trying to create more films at the moment. But in terms of project-wise, I do have a couple of personal projects that's supposed to happen this year. I'm not entirely sure how these travel restrictions things going to go on for, I'm not entirely sure how that is going to affect my project. Commercially, I still got a couple of things that I have to do for the next couple of months.
Oops.
No.
We lost Jimmy, but Jimmy, if you change your battery, it should come right back on. But okay, Joe, do you tell me what's going on?
Well, this has been a rough go with this COVID-19. We've had about 3 months of weddings have to reschedule to different dates, and of course, there's no shoots happening right at the moment. So it's been a tough time from a business perspective, just dealing with all of that. I don't know when weddings are going to come back. I think that social gatherings like receptions and wedding ceremonies are going to be some of the very last things that we see come back to our economy. So I'm definitely on the sitting there sort of figuring out how that's going to all go down. I don't ever see myself stopping or, not being a wedding photographer in some capacity. But right now, we've been dealing with that. I would like to get more into training and sharing and being a part of the community. I haven't been working that much on my YouTube channel recently because we've been just dealing with all of our clients and trying to get them all on the same page and all that in the last couple of weeks. But you should see more from me moving forward. I just got my EM1 Mark III, so I'm just starting to dive into all of that and getting some videos out there. And, I think that I'll just continue on, with commercial and portraiture, and hopefully weddings come back as soon as humanly possible.
Yeah, I hope so. And Joe has a terrific channel over there with lots of tutorials. He really goes into depth, and definitely his production quality is a lot better than mine. So definitely check his out, and he's official Olympus educator as well. Okay, Jim, I'm sorry you were cut off there. You're good for another 3 hours, right? So
I'm good for another couple hours, yes.
but go ahead and just wrap up what you were saying. Like some projects that you're thinking about improving on some things. And
yeah, no, it's more just get myself back together again, ready for the next level. And it's never been a bad time. Sometimes you just step back a little bit, just look back at what you've done and what you should be doing or improve for your next challenge and next adventure. I think that's what I'm looking forward to now.
Okay, great. Well, everyone, gosh, thanks so much for joining the stream today, Jimmy and Joe. I really appreciate it, and I think the viewers really loved having you here as well from the comments I'm seeing, and hopefully we can have you back sometime. No pressure, but you guys really are amazing photographers. Definitely, like I said, all of their links are below to their social media and their websites if you'd like to see their portfolio. I have the links to their YouTube channels, so definitely check those out. But thanks again, Jimmy and Joe, for coming on. It was a great pleasure and honor for me and our viewers here as well.
Thank you, Rob.
All right.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Yep.
Whoops. Sorry, guys. I accidentally hung up on him. But okay. Everyone, thanks for joining. And again, I live stream every Thursday, Sunday. And, I have videos on my channel, so check those out. But thanks for everybody that participated today. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon.